So a quick election update. In Zamfara, Governor Matawale loses his re-election bid to the PDP's Dauda Lawal. In Ogun State, the PDP's Ladi Adebutu challenges APC Governor Abiodun's victory. In Adamawa State, INEC declares the election inconclusive. And in Abia and Enugu, there's stalemate. And in Rivers State, the APC rejects the result, saying it undermined the will of the people. That's the broad political optics of Nigeria's governorship and state assembly elections. It's now pretty much all over, but the shouting, except where the results have been, as we mentioned, declared inconclusive or where there's stalemate. But the legal convulsions inside Nigeria over the process of the elections will last a while yet, possibly even years. So how should we assess this ballot in terms of that process, and how should we score the performance of INEC, given that the level of electoral progress in any country is often a reflection of the level of development in that country? Should we expect anything different in Nigeria, where the number of properly educated people is low, poverty is high, and the institutions of state are weak? Well, for his assessment, I'm joined now in the studio by the Executive Director of Development Specs Academy, Professor Okey Ikechukwu, who is a member of the editorial board of This Day newspaper and is also a Professor of Strategic Management and Human Capital Development. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start with the preceding guest who was here before you, Yusuf Dati Baba Ahmed of the Labour Party. They've now officially gone to court, filed their petition. What do you make? You've seen that petition.
Yes,
what do you make of it?
First, is their right to do so. Second, in fact, even before that, the point to make is that judicial action after an election is part of the democratic process. So that recognition of that fact is a plus. Now, if in the past there had been some questionable outcomes from the judicial interventions, it doesn't remove the fact that that's part of the process. So they've taken the right path. Second, they've also taken their time to tabulate what they believe will make their case before the courts. Whether it will do that will be what the courts will tell us. Having read it, I have some minor concerns, but that's not part of the conversation here. The essential point is that they've raised the case. They're going to argue that there were irregularities. We also saw clips of that election that gave grounds for concern. We saw clear indications of where certain categories of outcomes were not able to be uploaded, but others were going. Now, only the court can make a pronouncement on that. Beyond that, no matter the emotional commitment or investment anybody has made, either for or against the outcome, what I see is a major gain for Nigerians and for democracy at three levels. At one level, people actually came out to vote. Not because anybody asked them, but because they felt they should vote for so and so. Secondly, after that election, even in places where we saw clear disenfranchisement, we didn't see riots. So that's greater political maturity. At the third level, the signals from the leaders who believed they lost was not, it must be us. And that's why I found it shocking that even, shocking and commendable to Nigerians and the leaders, that even when there was a thank you tour, it did not lead into disruption of law and order. So at two levels, at one level, there's a legal thing going on. At the other, the Labour Party and its followers, this is also their chance to build greater group discipline and cohesion. And I think that's part of it. It's all evolutionary. But fortunately, too, from what Dati Ahmed said, they will accept whatever outcome it is. Which is not to say that we're not going to fight for it. Which is not to say that they're not convinced they won. But that if at the end of it, part of that process of determining democratic enterprise says, no, we don't think you won, that they will live with it. That is good signal.
Well, I mean, it'll be obviously a case of having to accept. Because
there's
not much else we can do after the Supreme Court. But let's just look a little more closely at that legal challenge that's now been launched officially at the Election Tribunal by the Labour Party. Their focus seems to be on the eligibility of the APC presidential candidate and his running mate to participate in the election, and also raises questions about the processes leading to the outcome of the election and the announcement of a winner. Do those seem like weak grounds to you for launching such a major challenge and trying to do what has never been done before, which is upturn a presidential election in Nigeria?
There's always a first time. If something hasn't been done before, it can be done at any point in time. So I'll grant them that. But on the question of eligibility, I'm a little concerned whether that is a strong enough ground for several reasons. Number one, who determines eligibility? Number two, were there questions of eligibility before he contested? Number three, those who are supposed to validate that, did they do it before he contested? On what grounds can that already determined variable be brought up for re-evaluation? Then, were there questions of eligibility concerning the incumbent president? The answer is yes. Did we hear about certificates? The answer is yes. Did we get even the military saying no? They did? Yes. So I'm not entirely convinced that the question of eligibility will constitute. There's very strong moral component in that argument because they are talking about character. That probably everything connected with this individual is questionable. But even if you speak from first, there's the legal issue, then there's the issue of natural justice, equity, and good conscience. And I think they're resting more on that. According to natural justice and equity and good conscience, if these facts are true, and some processes have led to people ignoring it, we don't think it will work. We're bringing it up again. But when you consider that only WAEC can revoke your WAEC certificate, only a university council can deem you not to have graduated with, with knowledge and character, and you've been working in a place for 5 years, and somebody is raising an issue about your certificate, for as long as the university does not invalidate that certificate, you remain on the staff list. Now, that will see to be the buffer that the Tinubu people are banking on. How that will be successfully challenged in court will be seen, because also the Labour team has very intelligent, very experienced lawyers, and so one can understand that. Then when you think of the element of the 25%,
yeah, that's the section 134.
Yes, it's a matter that the courts will have to argue.
Absolutely.
In logic, while I was teaching in Unilag, I taught jurisprudence for Faculty of Law students. And one of the things I brought, when you talk about or, there's the inclusive or, there's the exclusive or. Either Ikechukwu is fair complexioned or Ikechukwu is fair complexioned or so and so, or both. That's inclusive or. Is either he is this or this, but not both. Now you come to that section, there's and. That and, what is its ontological status? Resolutely linking and FCT, or suggesting with the and there's some element of discretion, in which case it is not mandatory. Now it's for the lawyers to decide. He's going to court. I could understand his point saying he wished they had rigged, they could still get there for 3%, but all of this, the general understanding was always that it included it. But nobody is going to break his head. There's the headache of the lawyers. However they argue it, however it comes out, we live with it. Yeah.
And of course the decision of the judges,
arguably
the justices, if it gets to the Supreme Court. But I mean, someone said that the level of electoral progress in Nigeria is a reflection of the level of development of this country, where educational numbers are low, poverty is high, and in those circumstances, dictatorial tendencies, intimidation, vote buying, and the suppression of votes are more likely to occur. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll discuss that with a sense of history. There was a time in this country when somebody from Kano, I think, won elections in Enugu to represent the people. He contested against an Igbo man. The Igbo man lost. And I think, was it twice even? Somebody in Lagos also, an Igbo woman. So if you take that to be an indication of a maturity of the citizenry, of the level of perception of joint ownership of the Nigerian project, it means what we are seeing is a degeneration. From that to this kind of thing we are seeing now. So let's not mix things up. It wasn't our what do you call it? Our records on literacy, education, and the rest of it was much lower then. It's higher now, but attitude
the culture was different.
Precisely. The political culture was different because you had a different type of leaders. Hamza Ahmadu, the later, who was the Wali of Sokoto, he was on the Guardian editorial board when I was there for 6 years, 93 to 99. You see, the idea was this. You had such people who were part of national memory. And he explained how, as private secretary to either Sir Ahmadu Bello or Zik, he was sure that every day, Zik, Awu, and Sir Ahmadu Bello always spoke every day. They understood what needed to happen for their people, but at the same time, they were concerned about living well together. Today, what kind of leaders do we have? They only meet when there's a deal to make along party lines, not about the nation. They travel by private jet, so they don't know the condition of the roads. And the processes that for leadership recruitment has been converted into a kind of gang replication, engagement. So looking at it, then what has happened is that the political culture has been substantially demolished, not just violated, and it's become a situation where you and I cannot have a basis for our political engagement. It's because there's somebody who we are calling organ who is giving us money. What it then means is that there's no ideology, no conviction, no embarrassment when a budget doesn't deliver. You read one budget, next year the same thing. Now progressively it then becomes, if you collect money from me, you choose the person I like. So the original notion that if we're going to choose somebody from our family to represent us, we'll send the one who is reasonable, which was a sense of community that could enable the person from Kano to win in. No, this man is more responsible. It has evaporated.
So in the context of what you're saying, are you struck by the fact, because I find what you're saying absolutely fascinating. Are you struck by the fact that Nigerians are so visibly religious, for example, and yet seem to be lacking in the principles and the morality that you're talking about when it comes to the practice of democracy, respect for the rights of the citizen, respect for values?
No, I wouldn't even speak of being religious. I think mostly unbelievers across all religious divides. How much of what is in the Bible and the Quran do people not violate in the name of politics? A believer is afraid of violating the first commandment as a Christian. I am the Lord thy God. So it's not about religion. It's the redressing of religion and economic and political power under economic clothing in order to fight each other. So what am I saying with all of that? Here is a Nigerian citizen who now lives in a nation where embarrassment does not exist. Where your cousin, whom you know, last year he had problem repairing his motorcycle. He's gotten into politics. 9 months he had built a 167 million naira house. Now, his uncles don't call him and say, Bayo or Emeka, what are we saying? I hope you haven't gone on evil ways. His pastor doesn't. His parents do not. The community, the traditional ruler gives him a title. What are you doing? You're creating new role models. An aristocracy of idlers who have a lot of cash and who are mentoring unconsciously the next generation. With that on the table, all the pillars that ought to constitute the moral anchor of society, of politics, of decency are totally violated. And so this is what you have. That you now find a situation where you and I know that I didn't win this election. You know how much I gave you. The youth know how much I gave them. But you address me as His Excellency. Excellency, which is, I have become excellent at rigging, at violating all the norms of good behavior, and I'm sitting on top. And after speaking, your father in your presence, you're a young man, will get up and say, this is one of the most illustrious sons of our community. That boy is getting damaged. The younger generation is getting damaged. Now, when all of that is also mixed with the fact that government has become a very strong, powerful source of funding, what do you get? It's what you have now. And take inventory and see whether it is not true that close to 70% of the billionaires in Nigeria today became billionaires between 1999 and 2023, and not because they built factories. You also have a corporate environment that's not making things good. Their profits are rising, but there's no indication they're employing more people. There's no indication they're giving loans to the real sector. Everybody's on rent. The economy is going under. On top of all of that, there's no security. So the state is also distrusted. Some people direct their anger at the institutions of state. They hate policemen when they see them. But a policeman is just somebody's father or uncle or whatever, and he's underprepared for his job, also under-equipped.
Talking about that, again, that's a very interesting analysis you're giving there. Is the model, for example, of INEC as an independent electoral, independent being the operative word, electoral commission now broken, as is, for instance, trust in the police that you're talking about? Is all that gone or virtually gone in the wake of this election season, for example, especially with regard to the police, which some people would argue seems to have underprotected the people? Is public trust and confidence worse?
No. I'll go get on the police and then get to the major question of the level of culpability for INEC. Now, I understand they deployed 400,000 policemen. How many polling booths do we have? 100 and something thousand.
176,000,
so
more than 176,000.
Yes, there's no question of whether they were totally inadequate. And remember, if you're going to deploy them, you have to withdraw them from every place. In fact, if you recall, because these are things, I keep data that I work with in the academy. Anytime there is, and this can be checked through some of the, anytime you have, like when you have a party primary in Eagle Square, find out how many checkpoints still exist in Abuja. So it's a withdrawal and replacement, not an expansion of it. Now, on what was the issue again? So the police, they were spread too thin. It's not that the police didn't want to work. So let's disaggregate the blame. First, the word independent in the name of INEC doesn't need to be there. It's just a gestural political thing to suggest we won't influence it. National Electoral Commission carries enough dignity because it has a statutory function to perform. If you say it's independent, it means it has responsibility for everything that will show electoral integrity, and that is not true. INEC is a position provider, a service provider. It provides the environment, a regulatory platform on how you should behave if you want to choose your leaders. INEC is not responsible for security. It is dependent in that regard. INEC is also not responsible for a lot of other things. To that extent, it's independent. So let's disaggregate blames. You and I are in this polling booth. We just conducted elections, and some people come, give you a black eye, knock me unconscious, carry the things and run away. And people are talking about Charles and Okey, irresponsible INEC officials. Couldn't they stop the criminals? No, we're not responsible for security. So when ballot boxes are snatched and INEC officials are not seen to have colluded, maybe invited them, meet them, the blame is out of that place.
So we've got...
on integrity
briefly,
now, if at the level of the polling booth I alter the results, and you find out that somebody gave me money, not even that the REC contacted me, I'm personally responsible. If I was given money and the REC was involved, it expands the chain.
Right.
If we send lousy report and the national level is now accepted, it makes it, yet when you can say INEC has done so and so. To that extent, the challenges on the table present a lot of concern. And INEC, I believe, is charged with serious integrity deficit as we speak.
Okay, well, we've got literally a minute and a half before we... Well, you gob quite a lot.
Oh, I don't know the type of clock you use here. I'm a press charges, Charles.
No, in fact, our clock is the most accurate one. It's just that you get into it, and it's very interesting listening to you. But what is the solution to this recurring problem, or these complex of problems that you've talked about? Because Nigeria's image is being systematically eroded because of this persistent lack of credibility.
The solution is first to understand the situation. It's indicative of a certain level of political immaturity. It's not new. Every nation that's advanced today was at some point in that stage. The second thing is that identify the problems and deal with them. If you've confirmed that INEC acted badly, identify the officers. Yeah, like in this, and that's the serious concern, that the elections of 15th, We saw videos of people who were preventing other fellow citizens from voting. Have we heard of arrests? No. We heard of an estate that people were locked out. Any action? No. So it further diminishes the confidence. Then the one of last Saturday, where people were actually going around making announcements, threatening people. Now, when such things can happen and people get away with it, we are not heading towards a solution. So what to do? In those specific cases where even visuals were involved, we need to hear at the national level that XYZ in so and so place have been apprehended, trial is going on, whatever, coming from the office of the IG. He then says, it's a leadership signaling. Oh, it wasn't sponsored from the top.
Right.
So if those interventions don't occur, and there's this triumphalism, it will only reinforce the impression that INEC was compromised. It will damage the reputation of Yakubu. It will wreck everything and further distance Nigerians from loyalty to the Nigerian state.
Okay. Prof, I want to thank you, as always, very much indeed. And Professor Okey Ikechukwu is the Executive Director of Development Specs Academy, a member of the editorial board of This Day newspaper, and a Professor of Strategic Management and Human Capital Development. Thank you very much indeed.